We're good to go.
Hello, y'all. Today is August 8th, Tuesday. This is our regular scheduled Board of Directors meeting of the Rossmoor Community Service District. I call this meeting to order. So, can we please have roll call?
Yes. Director Barkey is absent. First VP Maynard.
Here.
Director Searles.
Here.
Director Shade. Here. And President DeMarco is excused.
Okay. Director Seals, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. And ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today we have a few presentations. Up first, we have the California Special District Administration, Chris Palmer, Senior Public Affairs Field Coordinator. Mr. Palmer, welcome.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's the California Special Districts Association, just point of order there, sir.
Oh, I'm just reading off what it's here, California Special District. Okay,
No problem.
Apologies.
Good evening. My name is Chris Palmer. I'm the Senior Public Affairs Field Coordinator for the California Special Districts Association. If you're not aware, we're a statewide association. We represent special districts of all types: water, sanitation, community service, rec and park, mosquito and vector, et cetera. We have over 1,300 members statewide, and that's where we focus our advocacy, our professional development efforts on topics and policy areas that cover all special districts. So that's our focus. So General Manager Mendoza asked me to come speak to you this evening and give you a CSDA update. I live in Huntington Beach, so this is easy
great.
for me. I don't have to live in Sacramento, so that's a good thing.
Lucky for you.
So blessed to be here. So thought I'd just give you a quick legislative update on what's happening in Sacramento and also on the federal level. Also some of our professional development opportunities, and lastly, some member benefits. So, and I'm not going to try to take too much time. I know the CHP is here, and I'd like them to give a good update as well. So this is kind of just a little chart here, what we're going to be doing, what I'm going to be talking about. The timing for today was actually really good because it was just yesterday. I had organized a special districts legislative roundtable with the office of Congresswoman Michelle Steele, which General Manager Mendoza participated in. And by the way, he's been fantastic. He's been really engaged in our advocacy efforts here in the local level, meeting with both state legislators and also federal. Also weighed in on some of our efforts to get COVID relief funding for special districts, and of which Rossmoor did receive $40,000 out of the $100 million fund that we were able to get, thanks to our members for weighing in and being vocal. That definitely helps. So this session, no big surprise, but Sacramento introduced 2,661 bills. We are tracking 1,166 of them. 91 are priority positions. We do have a full legislative committee through CSDA that's comprised of 40 members, and the members are of districts statewide, both large, both small, of all types of special districts. So they have a very collective approach when they take positions on bills. And although we're safe this week, next week, the legislature goes back in the session, and they will have 1 month to pass bills out of the House and get them to the governor's desk. And then the governor, after September 14th, will have 30 days to either sign or veto said bills that make it to his desk. So it's going to be a very, very active next 30 days, so keep your head on a swivel because a lot's going to be happening. So I was talking about the roundtable that we did yesterday. It's actually National Special Districts Week. So we actually, federally, we have 2 major legislative priorities. One is federally defining what special districts are in federal statute. Special districts are not in federal statute technically. And this is what prohibited special districts from applying for ARPA funds during COVID, which is why we had to rally all our members, and we had to work with the Department of Finance and the governor's office to have them allocate the ARPA funds they were eligible for and then make it eligible for us. So we were allowed to get money from the state, we just couldn't get it from the federal government. So that is our top priority. We do have the bill language set. They are on recess right now. We'll have a bill number this fall. We have a bipartisan support. We have a Congress member out of Colorado, a Democrat who's going to co-sponsor, and a Republican out of South Carolina. This isn't a fiscal impact. All we're really asking is that special districts have the same opportunity that cities and counties do to apply for said funds, maybe it's grants, all those types of funding mechanisms and opportunities. We just want to make sure special districts have equal opportunities. So until we get that, we need this. Obviously, firefighters are firefighting is a big deal in Southern California, all of California. So we're also fighting to try to get more funds for infrastructure, water infrastructure for firefighting. Some special districts have been doing a great job. For example, Yorba Linda Water District, they built some what's called helihydrants, and they're basically these small reservoirs for the helicopters. They're much closer to the mountain range, so it saves helicopters 8 to 10 minutes to 12 minutes, which in a fire is crucial. And they're able to just drop the hose, suck up the water, and then go fight the fire. So they don't have to go to the closest reservoir or somebody's pool, and it makes firefighting a lot easier and more efficient. So we're trying to get more, but that costs money, and you have to lay pipe, and there's all types of things like that. So we're really focused on that for water infrastructure to fight fires. Now, General Manager Mendoza, he did participate. He did mention to the staff that the district wants to offer more senior services to your residents. Just sometimes you just don't have the staff to be able to do that. So the staff at Representative Steele's office has offered to partner with your district, provide resources for seniors, and also hold maybe a senior type of workshop, such as identity theft prevention or internet scams, all those types of things. And so they have a lot of tools and resources. I'm a recovering legislative staffer, so I know they have these things, and they're excited to partner with you, and they're very excited to talk to Joe about some of those opportunities. He also brought up some zip code challenges and sales tax inequities. I don't know much about it. What I do know is the office did offer to talk with Joe further, get more details. The office does have the capability of launching a congressional inquiry with the U.S. Postal Service to get to some more information, find out if this is viable. Now, if there's something about tax allocation and funds going different places, that may take a conversation with the Board of Equalization. But the first stop is the Postal Service to get this zip code issue. And I'm sure Joe knows much, much more about than I do, but I just want to let you know that he did bring it up. The office was very receptive to help. And then also, if you didn't know, we do have a local CSDA chapter called the Independent Special Districts of Orange County. They meet quarterly. All the special districts of Orange County get together and share best practices and have speakers, and they usually have legislative representatives giving updates from Sacramento and DC. So Joe expressed interest in getting more involved, and I would encourage the board, if you'd like to get more involved, we'd love your participation in that. Okay, I'm going to go through some bills there. Obviously, you saw we're tracking 1,100 of them. We're not going to go through all those tonight. I just want to kind of highlight a couple of them. AB 557, this is actually a CSDA-sponsored bill that has to do with boards for local governments being able to do remote meetings. If you remember back in COVID, the governor issued an emergency declaration for COVID. So we did have a bill, AB 361, which did allow special districts to meet remotely. But once that emergency order ended, the bill basically, you couldn't do it, and then it sunsets at the end of this year. So what 557 does is basically eliminates that sunset. So going forward, if there's any type of statewide declared emergency, maybe it's a fire, maybe it's an earthquake, maybe it's a flood, whatever it may be, if that is declared by the state, special districts and all local municipalities will have the opportunity to meet remotely. So this sailed out of the assembly, knock on wood. It's on the Senate floor, and we anticipate and are optimistic it will pass and go to the governor's desk. Now, this one is a little more important. 1637. This is a bill that mandates local governments websites must use a .gov address. Now, due to our members' input, we did some heavy lobbying. We were able to get special districts exempted from this bill. So right now, it only applies to cities and counties. The other side is we are encouraging special districts to at least reserve a URL with a .gov website address, because this will probably come back next year. So I just want to make you guys aware that your IT department or whoever handles that, you may want to at least reserve a .gov website address for your district in case, because basically the state's getting pressure from the federal government to do this. So we may see this come back again, but so we have a reprieve for this year, but next year we anticipate it may come back. We have a couple design build bills we're trying to promote that we always want special districts to have the least red tape and bureaucracy when it comes to building capital improvement projects. This one would extend the sunset date for design build for public work projects such as wastewater, solid waste management, water recycling, fire protection. So that also did pass the Assembly and is currently in the Senate. This is another one from the Senate side. Now this is a little different. It authorizes a progressive design build that's only right now, only water projects can do this, and we want this to apply to all projects. So this bill did pass out of the Senate. It's now in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. So hopefully we'll see some positive movement on that once they go back in the session. State budget, kind of a disaster this year. We're looking at a $31.5 billion deficit, but we really don't know what that's going to look like. Due to the storms, a lot of folks got a 6-month extension for their taxes to file those, so that number could change. Some of the 3 main things that the budget did go to was public transit, coastal resilience, water recycling, homelessness. That's 3 big issues. Obviously the water recycling is a big one for special districts. And coastal resilience, you guys aren't on the coast, but a lot of our members are there, and that's going to be something that we're going to be watching out for. I'm not going to get into this too deep in the weeds because this is a very complex initiative. This initiative has qualified for the November 2024 ballot. It would limit all local governments when it comes to increasing any types of fees, issuing any bonds, raises everything to 2/3. It's also retroactive to January of 2022. That's going to be a mess if this passes. And then the one I want to point out is requires all fees to be reasonable and not exceed actual cost. So basically it'd have to be your actual cost to the payer. So it has to be like, if it's an actual cost to me, then I could, there's gonna be a lot of litigation on this. And I'm not a lawyer, but it does change the local government's burden of proof to clear and convincing evidence, which is the highest threshold to make arguments when you are instituting any type of fee increase, those types of things. So one example is what this bill would say is you'd have to do, say you're laying pipe, it has to be actual cost, not reasonable cost. And that could alter your decision in, well, the actual cost would be the cheapest, and say these pipes only last 25 years, where a reasonable cost would be, we should probably spend a little more and get 50-year pipes that last longer. So it's going to really inhibit a lot of capital improvement projects and financing. So
Who's sponsoring this one?
this is sponsored by the California Business Roundtable, primarily a handful of developers who, obviously don't enjoy developer impact fees, and so we are hopeful. From what I understand, the polling is not going well for this, but don't hold me to that. There is a chance they could make a deal with the legislature. They have until June 27th of next year to make some type of a deal with the state legislature. That's happened in the past. They're kind of playing game of chicken right now. We'll see what goes on next year. But this is something I can get you much more information. It's very, very detailed. It's very nuanced. It's going to be a lawyer's dream because there's going to be a lot of litigation.
And your organization has a position on this?
We are opposing this.
You are opposed?
Yes, we are opposing this. So it's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of our districts to raise any type of fees, especially fire protection districts who are they don't do fee for service, right? They're just based on property tax, and sometimes they need to issue bonds to help pay for a new fire station, things like that. And this will raise the threshold for them to do that. So there's a lot of negative things about this. So we do have an opposed position. I'd be happy to give Joe all the information CSDA has, and he can share that with you so you can dive into it a little deeper. It's just we'd be here all night if we got into it all. So,
yeah.
And I don't want to waste all your time. So I'll get you that. I'll follow up with Joe, get you that information so he can forward it to you. I mentioned we have some federal priorities. A couple years ago, CSDA partnered with 8 other states and their special district associations and created this National Special Districts Coalition. This way now we're weighing in on federal issues. Traditionally, CSDA has just weighed in Sacramento and state issues, which is by far enough, but we need to be in the federal arena. And so now we've partnered with 8 other states and their associations. We have a full-time executive director managing this. You guys are a member of this. So now we're paying closer attention to federal legislation and trying to open up opportunities for us to, mostly a lot of it just to try to get the resources, but again, as I mentioned earlier, getting special districts defined in statute is our top priority right now. And we do a lot of professional development events. That's one of our keys. We have our annual conference coming up here in Monterey in August, end of August. We also have a special district leadership academy, which is really tailored towards board members. Probably 90% of attendees are board members, and most of the classes reflect that. Then we have our board secretary clerk conference, and that is in November. Now, just to let you know, you're probably looking like, oh, Monterey, that's costly travel. I understand that. We switch this every year. So next year, annual conference will be in Palm Springs. Special District Leadership Academy will be in San Diego, and Board Secretary, I think, will be in Orange County. So we do have scholarships available through our Special District Leadership Foundation that can pay for your registration fees. If you guys ever apply for those, please let me know so I can put a good word in for you. It doesn't cover your hotel or your car travel, but it does help and can save you some money. And I would recommend, if you've not been to the Special District Leadership Academy, you should check that out. Great information, great information. And all our live and on-demand webinars are free. That goes for the entire board, goes for the entire staff. All those are on demand, and some of our live ones are also free. And then lastly, I just want to go over some of our, I didn't get the slide in time, but some of our member benefits. CSDA, we offer insurance, we offer financing, low interest financing. We just created a local government investment pool this year. We also have discounts on all types of professional services. Maybe it's HR, maybe it's accounting, those types of things. Discounts on website hosting, website design. Also have discounts on enterprise rent-a-car. And I use it all the time and save a lot of money. So if you guys do rent cars for any type of business, we have a significant discount in corporate account with enterprise. So that's just kind of a tip of the iceberg. I just want to give you an overall view of kind of our 3 pillars of what we focus on. That's legislative advocacy, professional development, and member services. So with that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions. Joe?
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you being here tonight and taking the time out to give us all this information. That was a lot to cover in a short amount of time. You did amazing. A couple questions. Yeah. Yes. So you mentioned that you were part of a national, how many states did you mention that were part of the group?
8 other states. So there's 9 of us total. I don't know if I can name them all, but I believe it's Colorado, Utah, Texas, Wyoming, South Carolina. There's a couple other ones I don't recall, but so 8 other ones. Florida, that's another one.
Okay, and you also mentioned that you're doing the inquiry on the tax/zip code issue that we're having currently. So is that something that is there like a contact that?
I can help connect. It's nothing that we are experts in.
Okay.
So with Joe meeting the staff, what Joe will do is contact their district office staff, set up a meeting, give them all the details, and then the congressional office can then launch a congressional inquiry with the Postal Service. So every member of Congress does what's called constituent casework, which this would fall under, and every federal agency has a congressional liaison that these offices work with to try to help solve problems. And in fact, for your residents, if they have any problems with Veterans Affairs or IRS or Social Security, any of those federal agencies, if they're getting I don't know, maybe the agency lost something or they're not getting a response from them, your constituents can go to your local member of Congress and say, hey, I have a problem with the IRS. Can you please help me? And you fill out a casework authorization form, you submit it to the congressional office, and then they take it and work with the congressional liaison in whatever federal agency that is. So that's a service most people don't know, members of Congress do. State legislators do it also, so if you're having a problem with the DMV, EDD, one of those state agencies, they can do the same thing. It's called constituent casework is the official title. So, so that's what Joe and your district can do, is launch that congressional inquiry. Again, I don't know enough about it. I don't know if the Board of Equalization has to get involved. That's a whole different issue. But what my role is to help connect special districts with their legislators or with other agencies and try to put you guys together, because we're not experts in all of this.
Perfect.
So that's our role.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, always my pleasure. Yeah, it's an easy drive. So.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Community service districts are fairly unique in the scheme of all the districts that you currently serve.
Correct.
Within your organization, what is the percentage of community service districts?
Ooh, I'd hate to guess. I can get you that number. I will say we probably have the most, like I would say maybe 25 to 30% are water districts.
Yeah.
Followed by rec
Sewer.
and park districts, sanitation.
Right.
And then community service would probably come before cemetery districts and some of those others. But I would say probably fourth out of our list, I would say. I can get you an actual number.
I have a
and get
feeling
to
it's
Joe.
very small.
Not as small as you think. There's a lot of CSDs, mostly in like Central and Northern California, because you guys are basically a pseudo city, right? And for some of these communities, that's all they have. And so
Other
there's-
states call it a township, I've kind of found.
Correct. But you guys have latent powers, and
Yeah.
CSDs are very different across the state. Some only do a couple.
It depends
some
on
do a
how they
lot.
filled out the original application.
Correct.
So-
And obviously, if you want to expand those powers, you can go to LAFCO and talk to them about those types of things.
So do you think there is a community service district that's doing everything right, who's gone through stuff that we could contact? It's almost like we're one of the few in Orange County and LA County. We've heard of, there's communities like Rossmoor, but they're in NorCal and stuff.
Right.
I'm just curious, because you connect the dots, as you said, what are the community service districts we should be reaching out, and maybe they can be like our big brother?
Yes, in fact, I'd be happy to provide Joe a list. I have some on top of my head.
okay.
Hellendale Community Services District comes to
Right.
mind. They're out in San Bernardino County. They're kind of their own entity. And their GM, Kimberly Cox, is also on the LAFCO Commission for San Bernardino. She actually wrote our white paper on LAFCO and special districts. She is a sharp cookie. She's always happy to help CSDs, so I'd be happy to connect you guys with her. And there's a couple other CSDs in Riverside and San Bernardino County that are doing a good job, I believe. But there, like you said, there aren't any really there's, I think, one or two more here in Orange County, but they're very small. I'm thinking of ones that are equal to your size and services.
Yeah, I mean, we're 10,500 residents.
Right,
You
right.
know, we've got certain responsibilities, But since you brought it up in camera, I'm going to bring this up so at least you hear my point of view. I'm the
Sure.
one who initiated this whole sales tax zip code. So here's the issue, and it's also mostly for the people who are watching on the camera.
Great, thank you.
LoSal and Rossmoor have shared a zip code for years. At one time, Rossmoor used to actually have its own little post office, but when our county went bankrupt back in the 80s, they decided, don't need it, whatever. So we became 90720. At one time, there was a 90721. The problem has never, the only problem is if you use it with the utility companies, they know the difference between Rossmoor and LoSal, so we don't have to pay their city taxes. But in 2020, LoSal residents voted for a sales tax increase. Now, the residents here, we understand when we drive and go to Vaughn's, when we go to their restaurants, we're going to pay bigger tax. But when we're on our home and we're buying things on Amazon and we're having it shipped to our home, we are paying an extra 1.5 that does not go to any benefit of Rossmoor.
Right.
No benefit to the consumer here, all goes to LoSal. So the main thing is, how do we fix that? One of the fixes was, if you actually look online, the 90721 is actually technically still active. They actually have some boxes at their post office with that address. So it's active. How do you go to redefine it? And if you could redefine it here and then communicate with all the appropriate parties, you now can protect the consumer within Rossmoor so they don't have to pay that extra 1.5 sales tax.
Yeah, I think-
So I don't know how Joe presented it, but the way we're presenting it is we've got a taxation without representation issue analyzed compared to other counties, unrestricted counties are right now. So we're trying to fix that problem, but I wanted you at least to hear, as the originator, what the problem is, how we're addressing it. And since this is on camera, I've reached out to our state senator, who is our caseworker, and
Okay.
working with the California Franchise Tax Board.
Okay, fantastic.
And Mr. Mendoza, on my request, has reached out to Congresswoman Steele to go down that route too.
Perfect.
But I'm Tom Sawyer. Anyone who can help me paint my fence is welcome. If you have any ideas, for all you know, maybe this issue has happened with another community service district. It wouldn't necessarily work with a sanitation because there's no residents, or a water district, or this district. But within community service districts that are smaller and they're surrounded by other infrastructure of other communities, I wonder if this has ever happened up north.
It's a good question.
It's
I
a
have
good,
not heard it
good
before. Yeah.
query to just possibly help us out with a little query amongst your CSDAs within your special districts. Hey, anyone faced this problem before? And like I said, we are open to anyone who can point us in a direction to solve this quickly.
Well, obviously, I recommend Postal Service because
Yep.
maybe they can resurrect, I know it's technically alive, maybe
Yeah.
the zip code, maybe they can help elevate that. Second, if you want to get feedback from other districts,
We'd
my
love to hear if anyone
recommendation-
else has encountered this.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've not heard it, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
of course. But we do have an open forum in our community section on our website, so
Okay.
I'll send Joe a link to that. And what he can do is he can post this very issue on the board, and that goes statewide. So all the districts that are on our communities, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, they have the opportunity to chime in. So we may hear from, that's probably the most effective way to get the word out to other districts. But I'll keep my ear to the ground, but I think that's a good way to really broadcast this and see if any other CSDs across the state.
The right access to the right message board could help.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So that's why I recommend, I think guys are on the right path. I'm glad you got all these other agencies involved because it takes a lot of folks to get this done.
And a lot of time. So,
Yes.
Thank you for your time, Mr.
Great,
Palmer.
thank you. I appreciate your
Thanks,
kind
Chris.
attention.
Thanks. Let me again. Next up, we have a presentation from the California Highway Patrol. We have Officer Mitch Smith, who's going to present some traffic safety updates. Welcome, officer.
Good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I appreciate you having us out tonight. Appreciate the invitation as well. Thank you for allowing the California Highway Patrol to continue to serve the community of Rossmoor, and we appreciate it. Captain Scott Pointer, the commander of the CHP Westminster area, is unable to attend today due to a pre-scheduled training in San Diego. We were able to meet with Mr. Mendoza last week, and a lot of what I will be speaking about will be a reiteration of some things we talked about and some points that he was concerned. All right, so for those of you who do not know me, my name is Mitch Smith. I'm the Public Information Officer for the California Highway Patrol Westminster area. I've been on the department for almost 8 years. The first 6 years of that adventure, I've worked patrol. I've been the Public Information Officer the last 2. It allows me to work with all of our communities, provide traffic safety education for our high schools and elementary schools, middle schools, as well as different community groups. So I appreciate you having us out today. A few things I'd like to address before, and is this good? The mic height good? Okay. A few things I'd like to address before getting into presenting some information regarding second quarter. Officer Matt Musselman is no longer assigned to Rossmoor. As we move forward, we're looking at assigning a new officer to fill his spot and to serve as an increased visual presence in Rossmoor, as well as, along with myself, attend these meetings to not only address concerns, but keep that relationship between the California Highway Patrol and Rossmoor. We understand there's been a lapse in our attendance at these meetings, and we're working to get back on track moving forward. Responding to 911 calls in Rossmoor continues to be a top priority for the California Highway Patrol Westminster area. I want to remind the board that all of our beat officers are available to respond to emergency incidents within Rossmoor, not just officers that are specifically assigned to the area. We've been most recently using our recently formed senior volunteer program members as force multipliers within Rossmoor. Although they cannot conduct any traffic enforcement, they do deploy our radar trailer frequently in areas of Rossmoor, as well as conduct school patrols. Our volunteers drive fully marked black and white CHP patrol vehicles with a magnet sign that indicates volunteer. During these school patrols, which are scheduled during pickup and drop-off times, the two-person volunteer unit acts as a visual deterrent in school zones, focusing on reducing speed, double parking, and other unsafe and illegal traffic issues. Additionally, the CHP is working statewide on developing e-bike safety curriculum. E-bikes are a great concern to all of us, not only in Rossmoor, but across the state. When the curriculum becomes available, we'll be integrating that curriculum into our target age groups here in Rossmoor, Orange County, and in California. I will be speaking to you regarding some statistics from our second quarter of 2023, which spans April 1st to June 30th. In the Rossmoor area, the California Highway Patrol responded to 11 calls for service. All but 2 of those calls for service were traffic collisions. The other 2 were referenced a parking violation and a defective traffic signal call. 6 traffic collision reports were generated during this time period. Primary collision factors, or what we determined to be the causes of these collisions, included unsafe speed, unsafe backing, unsafe passing on the right, and stop sign violations. I would like to also specifically address 2 traffic collisions that occurred recently in the later part of July. On Wednesday, July 19th, at approximately 2 a.m., CHP Westminster officers responded to a vehicle versus residential structure traffic collision that occurred on Martha Ann Drive and Salmon Drive. A Toyota 4Runner was driving on Martha Ann Drive at Salmon Drive when it veered from the roadway and struck a residence, causing damage. No occupants within the resident or the driver of the 4Runner sustained any injuries as a result of this collision. The driver of the Toyota, a 22-year-old Los Al resident, was subsequently arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol. On Thursday, July 20th, at approximately 5:04 p.m., CHP Westminster officers responded to a vehicle versus parked vehicle and subsequent residence that occurred on the 3100 block of Bostonian Drive. A silver Ford F-150, being driven by a 19-year-old Los Alamitos resident, was traveling westbound on Bostonian Drive when it veered from the roadway, collided with the rear of a parked Chevrolet Traverse, which then collided with the residence,
Residence as
residence as in a home.
Okay.
Yes,
Property.
yes, I
Okay.
apologize. No occupants within the residence or the driver of the F-150 sustained any injuries as a result of this collision. I just want to remind everybody that responding to these calls in Rossmoor, they're very traumatic to the involved. It is of the utmost importance to us to respond to those in an expeditious manner and make the situation as safe as possible, but also keep in mind public safety when responding. So at this time, I'm going to kind of open it up for questions, then I have some comments about some things as well.
Director Shea?
Welcome, Mitch. Thanks
Ma'am.
for coming tonight and
Yes, ma'am, my pleasure.
spending some time with us. So, yeah, it's funny, those happened just like one happened the 19th, one happened the 20th.
They did. Unfortunately, sometimes it happens that way.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, I work with the schools a lot, and I know you mentioned that that's something that you do.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you have a card or that I could,
100%.
that would be great. So
100%,
contact you
yes.
regarding traffic safety and whatnot for the school district.
Absolutely.
Also, With the e-bikes curriculum,
Yes, ma'am.
when do you think that will be ready? You said it's being updated?
So the Assembly bill, and the number is off the top of my head right now, I'm not going to try to guess. There is an Assembly bill that shows that we have to, it actually assigned the California Highway Patrol to develop that curriculum this year.
Okay.
So we're looking for it here as soon as,
As soon as it's done?
right there,
But
right?
I'll get your number and you can let me know, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That would be great, because that would be something that we could, I know that is a huge concern for our residents, and it's something that would be fabulous for us to be able to share and get the information out as soon as possible.
I agree.
So, yeah, let's see. And you mentioned that the CHP is working to fill the empty spot currently, right, for
We are.
Musselman? And do we have a time frame on that?
We are looking within the next few months. We do
Okay.
have some officers currently temporarily assigned in some capacity. We will make that introduction to RCSD when they're assigned.
Next few months, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you so
ma'am.
much for coming.
Absolutely.
How many participants do you have? Well, thank you, First Officer Smith. How many
Yes, sir.
participants do you have in the volunteer program in Rossmoor?
So currently, right now, our volunteer program in CHP Westminster has 6 volunteers. We have 2 more that are in our hiring process as we speak. It's a sensitive position, so we spend a lot of time with these individuals, making sure that they're vetted and ready to serve properly. So as far as, was your question more directed to how many volunteers are actually physically in Rossmoor?
No,
Is that
I
what
mean, I think it's just great. I just wanted to know how much
Oh, okay.
participation you've gotten and, to let people know you're not going to be the only 2 people who are doing this, so.
Absolutely.
So come out.
No, they've been, I mean, I say force multipliers. It's really taken my position, which is so much night and weekend and just meeting the community, and just allowed me just that much more power to get out in the community and, make those contacts. So it's really been positive. It's really been a great benefit to the area.
I'd like to just jump on that and let you know that we use those volunteers quite a bit. We have a big parade that runs through here at the end of the year for the school year, and those volunteers are invaluable. I mean,
Very good. That's
they're
awesome.
amazing, yeah, and everybody loves them, so thank you.
All right. Our pleasure. Glad to hear.
And so do you know how many volunteers you have, like, for the Westminster station?
So yes, the Westminster Station has 6 currently,
Okay.
with two in process, with a goal of about 10.
Okay.
Right, and they do serve, they will work our front desk, greeting people. They will work, the school patrols and the deploying the radar trailer is really the stuff they can do on their own and really makes the biggest impact. So we're going to keep that going as well.
All right, and thank you for all you do, and clearly the back-to-school crowd. We're glad to have you around when you can be around, so thank you.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Couple of questions. You
Yes, sir.
mentioned the e-bike curriculum, and it's somehow tied to an assembly bill. Did that assembly bill already pass, and now that it's passed, you are tasked to
Yes,
create
sir.
that? Okay, I
Yes,
just
sir.
wanted to make sure I understood. Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
The next is, you mentioned 6 to 8 traffic collisions within Rossmoor.
Yes.
Are there any patterns there? Are there any particular blocks, streetways that are more susceptible to collisions just based on the stats, or are they spread within?
I would have to look closer at the statistics to
Okay.
make any kind of determination like that and look at the factors that contributed to those collisions. But off the top of my head, no. Short of having this time block where we had essentially 2 vehicle versus home traffic collisions back to back on the 19th and the 20th.
And those two, though, the commonality was youth and drinking,
Well, there was really not necessarily,
underage drinking.
well, the first crash,
Second one
there's
was-
no,
There wasn't on the first one?
no.
The second
So
one.
the first gentleman, July 19th, that was a 22-year-old Los Alamitos resident.
Okay.
He was arrested on suspicion of DUI.
Okay,
The collision that occurred on the 20th at 5:04 PM, there was no arrest made in that incident.
oh, okay. Lastly is lead times for these accidents. What is the expectation, and where did you actually end up with these last 2?
Lead times as pertaining to what?
Call response.
Okay, so I can tell you that the response did differ But there's many factors that go into that. Traffic on the roadways, how we are given the response, or our response is dictated by how we're giving the call by dispatch. The law makes it very clear that we cannot drive in a certain manner responding to certain incidents. Both of these crashes were categorized as non-injury crashes. So that dictates our response. There was a difference between the response times, though.
Okay, so your expectations is a fluid expectation because, again, if it's non-priority, you guys aren't going to be putting on the siren and going 85 miles an hour to get here to help. And I get that.
All of our 911 calls are priority
Okay.
for us. But the safety of the public is number one when we are responding, but we always respond accordingly. There's definitely no expectation. We're always going to get here just as fast as we can.
Okay. Lastly, and I know you're not an expert at this, but
Yes, sir.
you're probably way more knowledgeable than me. When a resident of Rossmoor has their cell phone and dials 911, where
Yes,
does
sir.
that go?
So depending on your geographical location,
You're in Rossmoor.
okay, when you dial 911 from your cell phone,
Yes.
it goes to the closest CHP dispatch center.
So it does go to CHP.
It does go to CHP. In this case in particular, probably went to the LA area. Calls frequently get bounced around. They try to locate the area that is responsible, but it happens very quickly.
But it pings based on the location of where the cell phone is,
Yes, sir.
not where the cell phone owner lives. An example would be, let's say,
Correct.
my dad was here, he lives in Claremont. He has an emergency here, he dials 911. It's not going to go to the highway patrol in Claremont because his phone is that area code.
Correct, sir.
It still goes to somehow the nearest CHP that somehow answers.
Correct.
Still don't know why it might go to LA, why it might go to Westminster.
So our dispatch center is located in, our Orange County Dispatch Center is located in South County.
Okay, South
Sand
County.
Canyon and the 5.
Okay.
So depending on where the geographically and the cell phone areas, that's about all I can give you is intelligent comments on that.
Right.
But I can tell you that is how the process works.
And being here in Rossmoor, it still should be, by design, 911 call from a cell phone, not from a hard line, would go to South County.
I can't speak of the design and
Okay.
it's getting a little
All right.
over my head on that point. I can look into that and get you an answer on that as well.
I think from an education, I think it would be good to know.
Okay.
And it would also possibly indicate that, the highway patrol is all of California. And even though we are in Orange County, we're 2 miles from LA County.
Correct.
Sometimes maybe only 100 yards from Orange County, LA County. And sometimes we might be better served in an emergency setting from a 911 to the nearest, not only officer, but the station taking the call.
Yes, sir.
Those are just my comments.
I will add that the correspondence between our dispatch centers is very quick.
Okay. Okay. I do also want to thank you for coming here.
Absolutely. My pleasure, sir.
And appreciate your time, and thanks for coming.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Smith.
okay, we're now at our public forum. Well, actually, no, sorry, I scrolled too fast. We have Miss Anaheim's team, Kayla Tang, who is a volunteer story time reader. So we have royalty in the house.
Wow, this thing is tall.
Adjust it any way you need.
Pull it down towards you, Kayla. There you go.
There you go.
You can hear me. Okay. So as you know, my name is Kayla. Hi, I'm Kayla Tang, and I'm a Rossmoor resident, and I'm also Miss Anaheim's teen from the Miss Anaheim Scholarship Association. I'm very grateful to be here today, and that Joe Mendoza invited me to speak here tonight with you about my community service initiative, which is literacy. I believe literacy is key. That's why my community service initiative is called Literacy is Key. Literacy serves as the building blocks, the foundation upon which education is built. In our rapidly evolving world, literacy and education is pretty much the key to solving many advanced tasks and even basic ones. So, despite all of that, 54% of adults in the US are partially illiterate. Literacy and education unlock doors in our personal growth, but they can also, through better understanding, effective communication, and widespread education, help solve many larger and collective issues. Being proficient in literacy all starts at a young age. It starts with fostering a love for reading. And I know I've always loved reading from a young age. It's why I chose reading as my community service initiative passion. This is how I came to be here tonight. I was a Girl Scout working on my Bronze Award, and I decided to build a website promoting and addressing the tiny free libraries in Rossmoor. And that's how I met Joe Mendoza, and he helped me publicitize this. So I'm very grateful to RCSD for doing that for me, and also Mr. Mendoza. 1 in 5 children don't have access to books, and 61% of low-income families don't have a single children's book in their house, and that is absurd. And those are the children who are most likely not going to be proficient in reading, and 45%, if they're not proficient by 4th grade, they're 45% more likely to drop out of high school, and dropping out of high school, where I come from, is a really big deal. So that's why I started Literacy is Key, and my initiative is focused on 3 core elements: using the internet online to advocate, doing story times, and book drives. I've been working with United Way OC to host these book drives, and so far I've raised money for raising books for a back-to-school book drive, and then also donated 150 books to an underprivileged school in Anaheim, Paul Revere Elementary. In June, when I went to go present Paul Revere Elementary, I did a story time there too. When I presented the kids with these books, they told me, "Oh my God, I can take these home." And the fascinated looks on their face, it told me that any work I was gonna do in literacy, it was gonna be worth it, because these kids were gonna get books in their hands. They were gonna understand stories, and they were gonna understand the joy of literacy. So now I come here forward to you with a new ambition. I want to raise 300 to 400 books for children all across Orange County, and of course, I'm going to bring along this journey with me, the United Way OC, and I hope I can also use RCSD, the Rossmoor Community Service Initiative, as a guide and a supporter. I've been working so far in the Rossmoor community by doing a story time 2 times, actually, at a farmer's market at Rush Park. It happens every Thursday. And I'm also hoping to host my book drive in the next 2 Rossmoor family festivals. In order to raise 300 to 400 books, promotion is really key. I need promotion power, because the festival will most likely be a one-stop shop. They are not going to go to the festival, come back to their house, and go back to the festival. So I really need to get my book drive out there so people are aware of it before they come to the festival. And in addition, I've talked with the CBK, California Pizza Kitchen, and they've generously donated me a bunch of free kids' meal bookmarks. I've done this before, where I got incentives so people could donate books, and I'm going to give a free kids' meal bookmark for every transaction of a new kindergarten to 3rd grade book, or books, hopefully. So I hope to raise 300 books for children, and I believe that with your help, we can most certainly get there and go beyond that. what I need from you specifically is very, very simple. Promoting what I promote to the Rossmoor citizens, and just really leveraging social media, since many of rumors, how information is spread, comes from social media. And I would also like to think a raffle at the Rossmoor Family Festival could also get people excited to donate books. But I would definitely need your help in gathering prizes and incentives for this event. Okay. Do you guys have any questions or comments?
Yes. Thank you, Kayla. This is a program that's after my own heart, having a daughter who's huge on reading as well. That's like her thing. So I totally get it. I actually saw your program that you're running on social media, so that's a great
good.
thing, right? Isn't that nice? I know I would like to see more of that social media done for sure. No question. I think it's wonderful. You kind of did answer a couple of my questions was, are you going to be at the Family Fest?
Yeah.
So you're going to be
course.
set up there taking collections, and you have a goal of 300 books?
Yes, 300
seems
books.
like
And I'm
it's
also going to be doing a story time at the Family Festival.
I knew you were going to be doing that. That's great. Have you, just a suggestion, have you been in touch with the youth center?
I have been in touch with the youth center. In fact, I actually enrolled in their leadership council
Perfect.
program.
Yeah.
I'm going to my very first meeting tomorrow night, and I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, that's
so. I've also actually worked with the youth center in putting a book drive on there.
Nice, nice. I know
So,
we work
close with
very
the youth
closely with
center.
them, so that's great that you're involved with them. I like hearing that. Perfect. Sounds like you're doing everything right down the line. I mean, you were going right, answering every question and ending with the whole promo thing, and I think that is essential, and we're going to do our best to support you. Thank you so much. You will have my collection at your table or wherever you're set out there for you on Saturday.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for attending, Kayla. I guess my question is, do you have any contacts with the Friends of the Library group?
I haven't been able to contact the Friends of the Library group since the library went into remodeling, but I'm pretty sure I still do have a contact there because I contacted the library and the Friends of the Library when I was doing my Bronze Award to see if I could promote my website there.
If I get you a contact, would that help you?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do that.
Perfect.
And Mr. Mendoza, are we able to make sure everything gets on our social media to promote this?
I'm looking at this.
Thank you, Kayla. Awesome. And
I'm looking
thank
at
you
that
for
too.
Did you do this?
Yeah, I did.
You did a very nice
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, that's the
Kayla.
one I
you.
saw.
It's very professional.
Thank you.
So the main thrust here is on August 12th, you are trying to get as many books as you can,
Yes.
as well as entertain some young ones by reading a story.
Yeah.
That's very sweet. I'm going to tell you about something my dad did years ago. When he retired, he had a lot of time and he had the same passion as you. So he and some other CEOs would raise money to buy books. And they would buy the same book. And then they would go to kindergartens because they realized parents weren't reading to their kids. So if anyone met my dad, very expressive man, he would literally read to the kids. He would do the fun voices. He would turn the page. He would wait and get them all excited. But at the end, what they didn't know is he then handed that same book to every kid and said, now make sure your parents read this to you. So with all that said, I'm a big fan of what you're trying to accomplish. My daughters are now 23 and 21. I do not believe I've got any kindergarten through second grade, but I'm going to search in case we do.
Thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for your efforts, and we are all on your side.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Is there another speaker? Should I lift the microphone?
They'll handle it.
Thank you, Kayla.
They got you. Thank you. That now brings us to a public forum, which I do not have any cards. So we're going to go to reports to the board. First up is D1. This is the administrative assistant report. Our administrative assistant, Caroline Wang, is not here. Is there someone who's going to be still making that report on her behalf?
I'll give you a brief report today, Mr. Chair, and Carolyn will follow up next month.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So just to give you a few of the duties that Carolyn has been trying to accomplish over the last 3 or 4 months was, and I mentioned this before, we're purging all of our files that have been here for 1987, I believe. Is that when we? And a lot of them were duplicates, and a lot of them are outdated. And so we've purged them, went through round 1 and 2, and we've put them in files, and we're getting ready to put them in jackets in order to put them back in the files. So we're pretty happy with how we've condensed things, and from there we're going to go to digitize them. So Carolyn's going to be heading that up, and we should be done in the next month or 2, depending on how the staff flows and how availability is. But we're pretty happy with that we've made that accomplishment. 2 is she'll be coordinating a contract and administrative meeting with our committee to talk about a number of things. One is review policies. We have a list of policies we want to talk about. User fees and structures, and then the pickleball will be part of that. And we're also going to be talking about staff bonuses that we talked about last time. So that's coming up. Carolyn's going to be setting up a meeting with our board president DeMarco and board member Shade to go over our website and talk about the future of our website. Traffic meeting is coming up in September. It'll be at this meeting. That's probably going to be the crux of the meeting, that and our pickleball restructuring. So there'll be 2 items on next September's meeting. The one that's going to be taking the most time will be Wazoo from the Orange County Public Works Traffic Committee will be presenting a presentation with our consultant that has done a traffic study on Montecito and Bradbury and that corridor there. And will provide the board with a number of options to consider and discuss. This, from now to next month, we're working, and this is an item later on our agenda, but this is what Caroline's working on. We're working on recruiting residents, informing them and getting them here that live in the condos, the townhomes, and in the homes along that corridor. And any resident who is interested in the subject. So we're looking at really making a change there. That's something people have been asking for. And I'm really happy to say that the Public Works has stepped up. They've hired a consultant on their dime, and they are working with us and Andrew Doe's office and coming up with some solutions. So what else? I think she'll end up providing you more information next month, but those are the meaty areas that she's really getting involved in. So I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding those subjects I brought up.
Now, both of those 2 issues you brought up, that's for a board meeting, not a committee meeting.
Well, we already had a committee meeting,
Okay,
for the traffic.
okay.
And they did a presentation to us, preliminary presentation to us. They went back with some notes, and they're doctoring up their final presentation to the board, which I use the word final loosely because there's a process here. We want people here to give input, and then we want the board's input for them to go back and make a good decision on what way we're going to go and how we're going to attack this. Because it could be very aggressive, or it could be a few minor changes that would impact the parking and the speed. So I was really happy with some of the things they brought forth, but again, they're massaging those areas, and they're going to be bringing it back for further discussion. So we might not make a decision in December, but we're going to be farther along in the process. Okay?
Any questions?
No, thank you.
No, thank you all. I wish Carolyn speedy recovery from her absence. Yeah.
Okay, moving to section D2. This is the Orange County Register of Voters presidential primary election.
Coming up.
Chair Maynard, members of the board, this is an annual collaboration between us and Orange County Register of Voters. They come to us and they request a voting site and center for them to conduct their business, and we are working with them. I just wanted to let you know what we're doing and some of the things that we work on a annual basis. So they will be using Rossmoor Park. We are negotiating reciprocation for some of our staffing and some of the things we have to do there. And they will be doing the presidential primary. And we look from March 2nd to March 5th. And they will be taking over the center. We will be assisting them. And that's where we'll be conducting business. The challenge there is lighting. So we will be bringing in some portable lighting. They'll be reciprocating this for our time and our effort along the walkway there and along the backside when people come to vote at the recreation center.
Did you say Rossmoor Park, Joe?
Yes, yes. Any questions?
Director Shade?
No, thank
Director
you.
Searles?
I would first say thank you for addressing the lighting situation. The walkway lighting in the evening would be poor in March.
Yeah.
Especially for the late voting. So I'm glad you're taking care of that.
Yeah, that needs to be done.
It's great that it's in Rossmoor. It's difficult parking. It is a difficult parking situation to pull up and get out and get back in your car and then go, and not having such easy parking as we have here for the building. But nonetheless, I'm glad that it's coming back to Rossmoor. So thank you.
My question is, I know when we do general elections, it tends to be for Rossmoor voters, but when it's a primary, are there less polling stations, so we'll get an influx of Los Alamitos or other voters coming in?
I don't know that. I'll ask that.
I'm just curious, because again, I already know general election, how the polling works within Rossmoor. But I'm just not sure about how it works when it's a primary, if they have less polling stations.
They used Rossmoor in our last election. They were very happy with it.
Yep, that was a general election, and
Yeah.
I think as that model goes, knowing, I'm glad that we get to help Rossmoor residents vote in Rossmoor. I was just curious, with the primary, less polling stations, is there going to be an influx of traffic?
Yeah.
Just out of a curiosity, that's it.
I will find that out.
Okay, any other questions for that section?
No, I
Okay.
think that's it.
Here we go, D3, street sweeping update.
Thank you. Chairperson Maynard and members of the board, as I spoke earlier, I'm going to kind of, I guess, go over some areas that I already touched upon, but again, Wazoo from the Orange County Public Traffic Investigation and Studies has hired this consultant. They are doing a traffic study right now, where they have received some input from our residents and our committee, and they will be coming to the board meeting next month to,
On street sweeping?
We're on street.
We're
sweeping.
on
oh, I'm
D3.
sorry. You're on D what?
You could combine them if you want, I'm down with that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I went to D4. Street sweeping signage is up. The sheriffs are enforcing sporadically right now. I know they're giving some warnings, but they're also enforcing. And we have received some calls regarding signage and the placement of signage, and we're going out with Orange County Public Works and Street Sweeping Company and the sheriffs in a couple instances to look at that signage and explain to residents why the signage was placed in where it is. There are some streets that all of a sudden turn from odd to even as they turn a corner or as they turn a curve. And it's a tough call, but signage is there. Some residents, are having trouble getting used to the change, but there's probably 2 or 3 situations that has happened that we've met on site last Friday. I have one coming up, and we all get together, make sure the street sweeping company understands the route, make sure the sheriffs who came up with the signage and placement of it because of the odd even aspect that we're into now. And so things are working out. Like I said, 2 or 3 meetings with all the corners and all the curves we have it isn't really bad. So I think things are working the way they should be.
Any questions on that?
No?
Now let's go to D4.
Okay, so as I said, D4 is the monthly traffic safety update, and we will be meeting next September at our board meeting, and a presentation will be given to the board, and we're trying to get as many residents here as possible. So if you can help get the word out, we're going to be doing a door-to-door mailer, a postcard that will be put out in the mail to the residents, advertisement in newspaper, social media, phone calls. We're going to be knocking on doors also. And we have reached out to the 5 townhomes and condos and that run up and down Montecito here, both in Seal Beach and Rossmoor. We're working with trying to reach their homeowners association representatives and their association that runs their business. And so we're happy that we've made some contacts and that we have some phone numbers that we're able to secure. And again, we're doing everything we can to let our residents know to come out and give their input. And with that, like I said, we'll do a huge social media attack, and if you can help, that'd be great. So that concludes my report. We're just happy we're moving forward.
Director Shade?
No, that meeting is the 12th.
Yes. We'll be publicizing it at this upcoming family festival. And like I said, we've been on the phone, and we're doing what we can to get people here.
Director Searles?
No, nothing.
It took me a while when I looked at the 5 different condos, because I kept on in my mind trying to figure out, I thought there was only 4, but it finally dawned on me, the difference between the Regency and the
Seal
Chateau.
Beach.
So, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that takes us to the next item on the agenda, which is E1, consent calendar. Director Shade, while you were out, our council mentioned to us that even when you miss a meeting, that does not preclude you from voting on the notes. So you do not have to
Oh,
abstain.
okay.
We do not have to pull them out. Did I state that correctly, Tarquin? I just want to make sure I stated things correctly.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. So,
Push that button.
does anyone have a need to
Yes, sir.
pull out any of the consent? Otherwise, is there a motion?
I would pull the minutes.
You want to
Just
pull the
a couple
minutes?
corrections.
Okay. So let's start with then
Expenditures.
expenditure. Is there a motion for expenditures?
Sorry, I'm just looking to see the exact number.
Exactly. Let me just
I got,
review a moment.
sorry. I'm just trying to see the exact title of the, we're all there doing the same thing.
Yeah, we're going
It's
back
for
and
the
forth.
budget.
Yeah, I move to approve the June 2023 revenue and expenditure report.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Oops, sorry. For the record, that passes 3-0. Director Searles, you wanted to make some corrections or clarifications to the minutes on section E1.
Yeah, so, thank you. The first item is Director Shade wasn't present. I do want to have her name corrected on item E2. It has shape instead of shade. So
I
that's
appreciate
on
that.
Page 19, E2.
Typo.
There are 2 E's, by the way, so that might confuse you. That also is a correction.
Still on page 19.
So still on page 19, under May 2023 Revenue and
Consent
Expenditure
calendar.
Report, it says motion passed 4-0 with Director Shape absent.
Okay,
That's a new one.
Yeah, so correct, no, that's fine. And then clearly we have E as consent calendar and E as public hearing, so we need to correct the
Typos.
headings, I guess, the alphabetized markers for each section to be
Okay.
consistent. There isn't an F, if that makes sense.
gotcha.
The other item that is more substantive is with regard to the pickleball discussion and be the second paragraph of page 23.
Okay, second paragraph.
Yes,
It just, I think that the paragraph is incomplete. One, it finishes with a comma, which leads me to believe there was more to it, and I think there was, that the discussion involved the canopy, it involved the carpet, it involved a true master budget plan and not just budget adjustments, and we stopped there. We went on, Director Maynard, I know you had asked to have the information about all the times the canopy had been raised, because I said the canopy project had been said as it was a priority. The playground upgrading was a priority ahead of pickleball, and the carpet was clearly ahead of it. So we had kind of talked about the tiers in which pickleball was going to be placed in a budgetary discussion, but that we had already stated that those other items were to be done, and that's not expressed here in the minutes.
So this is the third section,
Yes, the third section.
not the second paragraph. Discussion followed regarding enforcement,
Enforcement
costs
costs
related to
related.
implementing reservations only, cleanups and close-ups, subsequent steps to implement the program after approval, budget adjustments, comma. You're right, that's an
Yes.
incomplete fragment there. So what,
Budget adjustments being
Playground.
including that we would have a budget discussion, right? That budget and the budget committee needed to go in and work with the budget to set aside money for pickleball. And further, that we accepted that the canopy project was to be of similar quality to Rush Park, and that it had already been allocated as a priority ahead of that for the purposes of the budget discussion.
okay,
I'll re-listen to the video and make the adjustments.
Yes, I would appreciate that.
that's what I was ready to suggest.
Okay.
Because my memory doesn't recollect all this detail. So why don't you
Review.
go back to the video, redo this paragraph, and we'll vote on it next meeting.
That's acceptable. Yes,
Okay.
I just,
may I ask for a clarification? I remember the discussion, and I don't think there was ever a concrete motion or direction. So I'm out here, moving forward with the court resurfacing and things, and getting ready to go to bid for carpeting and the canopy. I don't think there was a direction.
no, I don't think there was either, and I mean, that was why I opposed
Okay,
it. But
all right.
but the fact that there was the discussion
Okay.
is omitted. It's
Okay.
not,
Needs
it's
to
not
be-
that the outcome is different. The outcome is that we still, I believe that, as a board, we need to have the budget discussion, and that's what I raised. And then, you're going to put it out to bid, I think is consistent with that, because you can't have a budget discussion unless you know how much it's going to cost.
Sure.
So the bids are useful. Just because we ask for bids doesn't mean we have to move forward with the project.
All right, thank you.
So-
Okay, thank you.
That's roughly what I was trying to get at.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah.
So, yeah, go to the
So-
video, go to the tape.
Go,
as they say.
exactly, this is instant replay, but not so instant.
Thank you.
Go back to the review booth in football terms.
Aside from those items, I would move to approve.
Well, we're not going to approve, we're going to wait for it to come back next week,
All
or
right.
next month, I should say.
That is acceptable.
So we've approved our expenditure, we're going to table this, and then we'll also have other directors who were there who will be able to comment. But I have every
Perfect.
faith that we will get this. So that takes us to, I believe, agenda item E2? Oh, no, that's what we already passed. There we go. I'm thumbing through, guys, just bear with me.
I did the same thing.
I'm used to having a piece of paper as my checklist going back and forth. Anyone have a page number?
36,
Thank you.
not at the bottom, but there you go, up a little bit.
Well, this is a resolution.
Yeah, so just above it is where, so, sorry.
Are we
Oh,
G-
thank you.
I
G1?
thought if you were looking at a PDF,
Oh,
it's
okay.
page 36 of the PDF, it's
Okay.
35 of the printed packet at
Okay.
the moment, without a cover sheet.
And we're here now. Agenda G1, this is resolution number 23-08-08-01, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Service District allowing alcohol at a wedding event, June 15th, 2024, in the Rush Park Auditorium with extended hours of 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Mr. Mendoza.
Chairman and members of the board, this is a request from a resident, Tanya Sutherland. She has submitted a request to hold a wedding and serve alcohol during the reception on June 15th, 2024. So we're bringing this to you for approval well in advance so they can start making their plans. They have looked at the room. We have walked them through our policies and procedures, and they're looking forward to possibly doing this on June 15th for their daughter. So we're asking to approve the resolution, and it coincides with H1. There's an agenda report asking for the same permission to run this event from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The issue there is they're extending hours. They're asking for a little more setup time, and we didn't see any harm in that, so we're asking the board to also consider that. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Should we move to H1, where you can provide more details and then come back here and vote?
You could do that, right, Kirk? Or you want to take it separate?
No, that's permissible. That coincidentally will also be the subject of another item we have later on in the agenda, so we don't have to do this anymore.
Sorry, that was very mumbly. So we're okay to go to H1, just keep going back and forth?
Yes, go
That's
back and
all.
forth.
Okay, so let's just jump to the agenda item where you can go into detail, and then we'll come back and vote for this.
So H1 covers the hours that they're asking for from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is extended and is out of our policy, but the board has the ability to approve that. They're asking for 13 hours and basically not to go over the time limit of 10 p.m. at night, but to set up earlier. So we feel that's a very good request, and we would recommend the board consider that. The attachments show that the requester has filled out the forms, put in all the setup time, ceremony time, reception time, tear down, and the alcohol to be served. They will be getting all the permits and necessary requirements there, and they have lived up to all of our policies, number 610 and policy 611, which are attached to this report. So we'd ask you to review this and approve not only the resolution, but also the request for extended hours.
Director Shade, do you have any questions or concerns?
Can I just, yes, thank you. I was wondering, like, what's our historical history as far as renting out this place and having alcohol involved? Have we had any issues?
No, we've only done it a few times, and we vet the request very closely. The youth center just did one on casino night, and then there was another 60th birthday party that a resident down the street had, and had a great time. We make sure there's security, and we have staff here also.
Perfect. Okay, that's the only issue that or question that I really saw. All looks good.
Director Schill?
I just add, in for those who don't have the packet before them, the current policy about the hours is it's not to exceed an 8-hour
Time
time
frame.
and not to begin before 8 or last past 10. So I see no issue with the time. I appreciate the diligence in preparing this well in advance. I have no objections.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Let the record show 3-0 for this.
You gonna take it?
That brings us, jumping back,
No, eight,
every time I have to
H2.
screensaver this off. That was it.
To the resolution, now you're going to need to vote on the resolution, and it's a
Thank you.
roll call vote.
Okay, let's go for the resolution. Here, I found it. Someone needs to make do we make a motion on this for resolution? Okay. Anyone want to read the resolution and the motion for 35? Anyone?
What page are we on?
I'm on page 35, which could be 36. We found out.
The motion would be to waive further reading of and adopt by title Resolution Number 23-08-08-01, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District allowing alcohol at a wedding event June 15, 2023 should be.
Oh, yeah, we were real ahead of our time. Is it this year or
No,
next
it's
year?
for next year.
It's for
It's
next
next
year.
year.
Oh, sorry.
Wow, that's
Sorry.
correct.
That's advance notice.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
that's it's
they want,
passed.
yeah, they
Right.
want to.
Don't mind me.
June
That is
23,
a
yeah.
well-planned machine.
Yeah.
June
Wow.
15, 2024, in the Rush Park Auditorium with extended hours of 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Perfect.
Director Shade?
Are we doing a motion to?
Yes.
This
we're
is
doing roll call
resolution.
vote.
Yeah, make
Just say aye.
I,
There you go.
Director Searles?
Aye.
First VP Maynard?
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, which brings us to, just so you know, I'm scrolling like crazy.
H2.
We're on what now?
H2.
H2.
H2. Thank you.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Back to H2.
I'm scrolling. Oops, too fast.
I want to ask for a correction on this,
All right.
because the resolution that was just read as G1 is not the same title as the resolution that is attached
H1.
to what is page 36 of the agenda packet. The page 36 resolution is about the alcohol consumption only.
So, getting to the resolution that we have to do because it's alcohol, states for alcohol, but we did also vote for the extended hours.
So we passed a resolution about the extended hours, but we have not read the title
alcohol.
of the resolution for the alcohol consumption.
Is that a separate?
Yes,
Yes,
no,
it
we
is.
did.
It's H1.
You read it, though.
Yes.
No, she did not
Yes.
read, you only read
G1.
the 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. portion. You didn't read.
There's two
I'm sorry,
portions?
no, okay, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District allowing alcohol at a wedding event June 15th, 2024, in the Rush Park Auditorium with extended hours of 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
And what I'm saying is that is not the language of the resolution that's in the
Different than that.
packet on page 36.
So the reso is asking for, this is perfect timing. This is what we've been dealing with for the last 5 years as I've been general manager. The resolution comes before the
Yeah.
board, and on H2, we're asking to change that policy to combine it. So,
Got it.
but in this case, Director Sho is absolutely correct. The resolution 23080801 is asking specifically to serve alcohol between 4 and 8 p.m. The other title was the extended hours, correct? Okay,
So how do we remedy this?
we just, I think
Read the
Read
resolution
a
for the
second
other one.
resolution.
Okay,
Right.
someone please read that.
Okay, I will. We're asking the board to pass Resolution 23080801, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District approving the consumption of alcohol at a wedding reception event to be held on June 15th, 2024, from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Rush Park Auditorium.
Yes.
Okay, now we can
Thank
do roll
you.
call.
And now we take roll
Move to
call?
approve?
Okay.
Okay.
Director Shade,
Yes.
Director Searles,
Aye.
First VP Maynard,
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
That brings us back to, here we go, H2. This is a discussion and possible action regarding altering the board meeting agenda policy to include resolutions within regular calendar agenda items.
That's what he's
We just
talking
had a
about.
little case study on
Yeah.
that issue. Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you. Chair Maynard, members of the board, this is, we're recommending that, that the board approve the amendments of policy 5020 that include absorbing resolutions within the regular calendar section of the board meeting agenda. As you just witnessed, this has happened numerous times to us. The resolution previously came before the board agenda item, and it was very confusing going back and forth and figuring out which one to approve first and which one to approve, look at second. So the current policy 50-2030G, resolutions and ordinance, calls for a separate approval by the Rossmoor Community Service District prior to the review of the corresponding board agenda. And as you can see in attachment 1, Tarquin has redlined those changes. So to expedite and make the process clear and to be consistent with other public agencies, which all the agencies I've come in contact with do not do it the way we've been doing it. They streamline it. Staff is recommending including resolutions that do not require a public hearing, and Tarquin might vet in on this in a minute, with a corresponding regular calendar item. Therefore, approving the agenda item and resolution with one motion, see attachment 2. Again, the action will remove the resolutions from G, combine resolutions with regular calendar reports, and adjust other items accordingly. In addition, revisions are proposed to section 5020.20, public request, in order to clarify the procedures applicable to the request to place items on the agenda. So that concludes our request and our report, and Tark and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Director Shade.
Boy, there's a lot on here.
Are you reading just the red line?
No, I did read all the red line, though. I did thumb through that. I do have a question regarding the time for submitting any agenda additions. That's a 10-day? Looks like it's a 10-day.
What
Timely filled, it's 5020.23, appeal or rejection. Not to include any item on there, may be appealed for the, you got to do a written request, appeal within a 10-day calendar. To Joe.
Yeah, Director Shade, if I could clarify.
Thank you. I would
Certainly.
appreciate that, Tarpon.
So the revisions here are attempt to clarify and codify by policy procedure. So for example, if a member of the public wants to place an item on the board agenda, the general manager is the authority whether or not it's a proper public matter within the district's jurisdiction to place it on the agenda. If the general manager says he informs the district or informs the resident he or she is not going to place it on the board agenda, that decision of the general manager can be appealed within 10 days by filing an appeal form, written request with the general manager, and that decision of the general manager would then be placed on an agenda at an upcoming meeting for decision by the board on the appeal whether or not this is a proper matter to be placed on a public agenda.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty much, going through this, like I said, there's a lot on here to review, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Quick question before Director Sills. This is a first read, correct?
Correct. And when we get to the
final.
introducing resolution, it'll be stated as part of the recital that this is introduced for first reading, the revisions to this policy.
Thank you.
So this is just our first reading. We're not voting on this, because I would tell you, I had the same comment that Director Shea did, is it looked like section 5020.23 has other items redlined that aren't pertinent to the rationale and recommendation of why we're doing this. And my thought is, if there is a rationale, just be clear about that. It's not, because this looks like we're trying to accomplish more than just one thing. At least that was my interpretation. I could see why Director Shade mentioned it. And again, there's more red line to me that says, okay, if you want to fix something else at the same time, sure, but please be open about it and let us know what you're trying to achieve. It seems like there's more than one issue here.
So maybe it's just the verbiage.
Director Soros?
But I think the blunt question is, who introduced the revisions to 2020,
But two.
5020.20?
No, 0.23.
No, but
Oh.
the changes in .22 are also not consistent with.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
So
but
Same thing.
Yeah, directors, if I can speak up.
public, yeah, this is a public request.
Correct.
issue.
This was a general council initiated item to
Okay.
make this change. This is not a request from the board, this was, or a request from the general manager. The board at the last meeting requested the general manager and I bring back revisions to the board policy 5020. I noticed that there were typos and inconsistencies that somehow snuck into 5023 that referred to closed session, which is completely inappropriate. It did not make any sense, at least the way I read it. So this was an attempt to clarify and provide a procedure for members of the public who want to place something on the board agenda to be consistent with the Brown Act, because the way it read previously at a meeting where someone was denied requesting something placing on the agenda, the board could have just voted and sort of heard that appeal at that evening without placing that appeal on the agenda itself. So it would be an unagendized item that the board was taking action from. I'm not aware the board has ever done that, but the way the policy read at the time would appear that it could create a Brown Act inconsistency or violation. So that was sort of the main attempt to clean up this policy, to avoid, to clarify the typos and conform to the Brown Act.
Well, I suggest then, this is our first reading, but in this agenda item for next meeting, we need to have a council notation that you articulate everything that you just said, so the other two board members who aren't here can hear that out. So in other words, while looking at the overall policy, you saw some things, and you, just like our general manager puts in recommendations, put in legal counsel recommendation of why you are suggesting these changes.
Absolutely. We'll include that in the staff report for the
So
second
that
reading.
will be
That'd be a good
next
idea.
meeting. We'll have
In the
that-
staff report,
And that will be
exactly.
part of the commentary. Okay.
Exactly.
A little clarification.
I guess I would have a comment that I don't know that it's entirely consistent to have 5020.21 requiring that there be 2 weeks prior to the meeting, the request. And then you don't have a timeline for the general manager to respond. So then the general manager says takes 5 days, and now the person has 10 days to file the appeal, so now it moves after the meeting. I think that if you want to be consistent with there being deadlines, there also needs to be deadlines for the general manager to provide a response that's consistent.
Yeah.
I don't know what that timeline would be, but I don't think that placing a deadline to file or to ask for something to be on the agenda, not have a deadline for the general manager, and then require the appeal to be deadlined with respect to, having it heard before a meeting or it getting tabled, because I can imagine a situation where the general manager doesn't have time to get to something or decides he or she doesn't want it to be denied until after it moves past that window in which someone could appeal. And now the person's complaining at the meeting saying, well, I have 10 days to appeal and I didn't have time because your general manager didn't respond. So you're kind of putting them in a spot too, of not giving them enough time to do their appeal so that it could find its way onto our agenda, which is done 48 hours before the meeting, right? So even this doesn't quite guarantee anything, because this has
Right.
nothing to do with the agenda being formalized and posted ahead of our meetings. It's
Yeah,
still
I
within
actually
the-
noticed that earlier as well.
I just, I think,
Thought
I
the
think it would be
same.
best to have this come back, this
Yes.
particular section be separated
Yes.
and come back for its own reading,
I agree.
first reading next month with a clarification as to what's going on.
Can I make a suggestion,
Yes.
Director Searles?
I-
Simply in terms of paperwork, it's preferable to have all changes that are going to be made to a policy made in one document, rather than having subsequent amendments and then having to republish the policy several times. Certainly, we can include you can make suggestions as the exact verbiage you want here now, and we can include that as second read, and then if that's not acceptable, we can change it again and reintroduce it as a new second reading. My goal is just to keep everything on one document rather than having to make changes.
I get where you're going with that. And my only question is, you saw some insufficiencies, you took initiative, which, thank you. Based on Searles or Director Searles' comments, is I don't know what best practices are for appeals and what those shot clocks look like. So that's where I guess I need some guidance from you, Mr. Mendoza, of what are other agencies doing whenever there's an appeal of rejection notice, and what is good policy? What also are the other community service districts doing? This is where maybe these associations, because I don't have an answer to that. But I want to know, and I want to make sure we make the best decisions we can.
I can comment on, for the public agencies I represent as either
Yes.
city attorney or assistant city attorney, I'm not aware of other cities that have a policy similar to this. And I'm not aware, I don't know about community services district, but normally, the city manager, the city council, there's a procedure for what goes on the agenda, but I'm not aware of a situation where a public person could place something on the agenda, or if that request is denied, that's an appealable decision. But those are for the cities I represent. There may be other community services districts, other districts that have a policy.
And I would say that what I love about Rossmoor is being a special district, being a community, is we get to do things better. And the whole thought is, if some member, my neighbor, wanted to be on the agenda and made a public request and it was denied, there should be an appeal. There should be a formal process so people can be heard. So while other cities might not do it, okay. So that means we, as a board, have to kind of come up with our own terms, our own definitions, because I think the spirit of our forefathers who wrote these 20-something years ago thought it through, saying, you know what? And this is not just for one particular general manager, it's just part of process. If someone wants to be on the agenda and it's denied, what's the appeal? What's the timeline? How many calendar days? What's the shot clock of approvals? Because there should be an appeal. So I don't believe in removing it. How do we fix it?
Can I make a suggestion?
Certainly.
So it currently reads as revised: appeal of rejection. A decision of the general manager not to include an item on the agenda may be appealed to the requester, by the requester to the board. We could add in a decision of the general manager not to include an item on the agenda, comma, shall be made in writing and delivered to the requester within 10 days of the request, or 14 days, whatever you feel is appropriate, comma, and may then be appealed by the requester to the board, et cetera.
Okay.
Back to my concern about this is, you're saying that one of the reasons you do this is to avoid something being put on the agenda for a special review, but it also seems like this new language would allow a general manager to sideline somebody's request until after the next meeting. If the general manager sits on the request and doesn't deny it, but doesn't put it on the agenda, then, the person doesn't have any recourse. So, and then it just doesn't seem to me to make sense that you're not allowing someone to approach the board if the general manager sits on an item. That's really what I'm seeing as more of a, adding more layers of the appeal time without saying when the general manager needs to respond seems to be one-sided. And I understand that it's hard to say when the general manager will respond because you don't know what the item on the agenda might be, that it might take longer to decide whether it should or shouldn't be on the agenda. But I don't like there only being a calendar on one side to a two-party interaction.
No, but the intention of my amendment, on the record amendment, is to have the general manager respond within 10 days or 14 days or whatever timeline, the general manager and the board feels is reasonable. That was the intention of my,
But it's not included.
No, I'm including it for your consideration. And it can be brought back as first read to the board again at the September meeting. But I'm offering some language that the three board members present tonight would be comfortable with for Joe and I to bring back at the next meeting.
Second read.
Yeah, what he's asking for is direction
Yeah,
from us.
Absolutely.
So do you have any specific direction, Director Seals?
My feelings is I would recommend that it come back for a first reading with full understanding as to why each section is being changed and how it relates to the other. If this section's being changed, it's being changed for this reason and it relates to this section, and that will be the engagement for that section.
And that was direction we already gave him, but you had something specific that this didn't seem mutual in a two-party situation. And if you had language for our council that would satisfy that, he can add that for our second reading next month.
I actually do agree with that completely as far as the revision goes. I think it does need to include more of a two-sided, because it does seem one-sided right now. That was a concern when I read this as well, as far as the timeframes go. So just a revision, perhaps, and come back with a first read. With a more clear understanding.
It would fit in 5020.22 is where the general manager is making the decision. How that timing is done would be in that section. I don't know to the extent that I'm not a general manager,
Right.
so I don't know. I can say that if something comes in on Friday, then you wouldn't expect it to be done in 2 days. And so there's just different factors that are involved with it.
Yeah, I agree. It all depends when the request comes in and when the agenda is going to be posted and
Maybe
when
that's
it's
exactly
prepared.
what we need to put in there.
But that to me is why I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I guess there's a certain part of me that's not sure that this is solving a problem that we don't have policies that already deal with. If something needed to be put to the agenda, it would have to follow all the other requirements of the Brown Act. To which I would also say, with Mr. Palmer being here, and we haven't had a Brown Act education session in a while, so it might be time to do another one. So that's there's not an obvious interplay to these sections that are being added, and for me, I would rather it be a full discussion and an understanding as to why we're moving forward with it. I think it's clouding up, honestly, I think it's clouding up the purpose, which
Yeah.
is the other section. And I wasn't necessarily sure why it came forward. I appreciate you explaining now, Tarquin. I just unfortunately feel like it wasn't included in any other way.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to move on. This was our first reading. You've gotten first reading feedback. And I'm going to be doing, and you're welcome to join me, do your own. We all have policy books. I'm going to look at this policy, and I'm going to at least come back to the next meeting with potential language that at least I'm comfortable with. and I suggest the two of you, as well as our other colleagues, when they do, come prepared for this section of,
Agreed.
do you have any wording that you think makes this for what the intent is? The intent is our policy, and I firmly believe our general manager works with our president to set the agendas of what goes on the agenda. If the public wants to be on the agenda, he is the gatekeeper. I'm not questioning that at all. But if he said, but the other thing is, you got to prevent from the future of a potential rogue general manager who stonewalls or puts up a bias or something like that. So I believe in the gatekeeping of the general manager, but I also do believe that the citizen deserves an appeal. So we will move on from this. You hear our input, so let's have another reading, recognizing that this might end up being a third reading.
Correct. My recommendation, if the board is not comfortable with adopting proposed language as revised, that this would not, you would not approve this as first reading.
Well, yeah,
Just
we're
direct
not.
this to come back to first reading with revisions and for discussion at the next meeting.
Okay.
And I'd just like to add just a little bit of feedback that I don't see so much of an objection with 5020.22. I agree that it seems there's some confusion about the closed session versus open session and the general manager's decision whether, something would be proper for the agenda. So I'm not sure if that distinction was made because the general manager can put something out for public discussion that we might have disagreed should have been in closed session.
Yeah.
So I would be curious as to what the intention was that the closed session part was included in .22, and if that was intentional or not. So if we have a history of the adoption of this policy, it might explain why closed session was used there instead of open or not at all, no distinction at all, which is understandable what you were raising there, Tarquin.
Yeah, so that would likely, I think, obviously, you have the general manager to sort of pull those documents, but it may be, there have been revisions to this policy, 1, 2, 3, it looks like at least 7 or 8 times, 6 or 7 or 8 times. Those could all be pulled from the archives with the agenda reports if they actually show the revisions and so forth. But from a legal standpoint, only to make the general manager the sole arbiter of what's placed on closed session actually creates legal problems, because there may be, I'm not saying there is, but there could be a situation where the closed session involved the general manager, and then obviously the general manager wouldn't be the person to decide whether or not it goes into closed session. So that was one of the reasons for removing that. It should be, that decision be made by the board president and legal counsel.
Yeah.
What is the proper subject for a closed session if the general manager wasn't involved in that by reason of recusal.
Yeah. And I'm going to take a step back. When I actually read the agenda over the weekend, I was actually surprised that this was on here. And the reason I'm saying that is we have a Personnel and Contract Administration Committee with Tony and myself on it. I actually think, Joe, that before the next reading, let's get Tony and I and the Personnel and Contract Administration Committee to go over this policy, this whole policy number 50 whatever, the whole thing, its intent, and come back to the board for, I'm not going to even call it second reading, for a new first reading. And by the way, before that committee meeting, I welcome any input as a committee member that you guys can send me.
Suggestions?
Exactly. Anything you have, again, we all have
Absolutely.
access to these books. You know we're going to be looking at this particular policy. Look at the whole thing. If anything confused, make notes. Send to Caroline, she'll bring it to the meetings, and we'll
Review.
try to do a good job and bring something back that fits for a true first reading. So,
Okay.
okay, moving on, I think, because I'm going back and forth and getting carpal tunnel here.
Can I say
We're not done?
No,
with you?
I think because I think we've missed the point of what we thought that was going to be about, which is about moving the resolutions
Yeah.
into, and I would say that section to me is acceptable. And so the bulk of what we were thinking we were going to discuss about the agenda setup, I would agree with moving the resolutions and ordinance into the other item.
I agree too.
So I'm
But I'm just saying,
this is here.
let's have this go to committee instead of straight here.
Okay.
And
perfect.
let's try to fix this.
Well, I'm giving my feedback is
Yeah.
I still support that, so,
Okay.
all right.
So to clarify, we're taking both items back to committee?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I also believe in when we open up a policy number, I do agree with Tarquin of, let's really look at it. We're making a legal investment, we're making time and effort, we're doing this for a reason. Let's go through a more thorough process,
Do it correctly.
or process, as my Canadian father would say.
I would feel more comfortable with that.
Okay, I believe we're on general manager items.
Yes, sir.
We are? Okay.
Yes.
What page is that?
Page 59.
Thank you.
Chairman and
Got
members
it.
of the board, I'm just going to briefly go over some items with you. This Saturday is another family festival from 2 to 8:30. The Emperors will be playing. They will be the headline band. And I also want to remind you that Mulch Day is also this Saturday from 9 to 11 at Kempton Park. Bid packages have went out for basketball, pickleball, and tennis court resurfacing and pickleball conversion. The bids are due August 23rd. They have been publicized in the paper and on our website, and we do have a mandatory walkthrough, I believe on the 16th, if I recall correctly. The carpet and flooring at Rush Park is package is being prepared now. We've taken our time here because we've asked a couple of vendors to come in and compare measurements here because there's so many different items to look at. And we're also looking at the East Room, and we're looking at some sound mitigation, acoustical sound mitigation for both rooms. So that's taken a little longer, but that'll be part of the package. And I will be presenting that before we go out to bid to our Parks and Facilities Committee. The canopy at Rush Park is also, there's some specifications there we're looking at, and I believe, we didn't take a vote on this, but I believe Mr. Maynard brought up the request and the ability to maybe look at upgrading that shelter, and we will be bringing that to the Parks and Facilities Committee also. Staff is working on, let me take the next step here. We're also working on proposed contractual renewals for Personnel and Contract Administration Committee for Brightview Landscaping and the SCA, Street People Corporation of America. And we will be setting up a meeting date with those entities and also with our Contracts and Personnel Committee. Final Family Festival will be held on September 9th from 2 to 8:30. And then we have another Health and Wellness Fair coming up on November 4th from 12 to 6. And I'd like to invite the board out, if you are available, to come to the Chamber of Commerce Heroes Luncheon that we are also part of. It will be hosted here at Rush Park from 9 to 1 p.m. on September 21st. If you're interested, you need to let me know. I'll get you a seat at a table. Lunch is included, and it's a great, I don't know how many of you have been, it's a great event. President Marco cannot make it, so first, Chair Maynard, if you're available to do
I'll make myself
to
available.
the opening and greeting, that'd be awesome. So I'll get you the information. So please, if you can, RSVP tonight, or let Jessica or Carolyn know, or myself, that you're going to be able to attend. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Director Shea.
Oh, thank you, Joe. I am on the board at the Los Alamitos Chamber of Commerce and part of the planning program on this. I work with Tony very closely, And I have been in attendance in every single one of these, and I highly encourage the board and anybody else that can come to please attend this because it is an amazing event. One of the best that we have here. It's attended really well, and it's a wonderful celebration that everybody enjoys a huge amount. I thank you for bringing that up, Joe. So count me in.
There
You
you
know
already
it.
have 2 RSVPs.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're going to put him on the spot.
Right. It's an amazing event. I highly recommend it. I always make room on my calendar for it without question. I will be here on Saturday, of course, you know that, at the Family Festival. And I think that's it. I don't really have any other questions. I thank you for organizing everything that you did tonight, Joe, and bringing in our special speakers. I enjoyed every single one of them. Kayla, she's a rock star, clearly, and I will be supporting her as well. Thank you very much.
Any questions for general manager items?
No, thank you, Joe.
I have one, Joe, for this Health and Wellness Festival. Please have someone from your staff who's setting this reach out to my company as a potential sponsor.
Will do.
Who is that? Is that Chris?
That's Chris.
Chris, reach out to me on the Health and Wellness Festival if you're looking for more sponsors. My company is interested. Okay, that
Thank you.
takes us to, wow, I have nothing more to scroll. So I guess we're on council. I might be going a little bit of out order, so bear with me. Council, do you have any items? It's going to be a long-awaited no.
Thank you, directors. I'm searching for someone to say, only so I don't have to say no. But I think I've spoken enough this evening.
Okay.
And we've heard your direction,
All right.
and this will go to committee. Thank you.
Now that brings us to director items. I think you kind of went into your director items, so
I'm good.
premature director item, but thank you. Director Searles.
No, I have nothing.
I want to thank everyone who came out here. I do also believe that Kayla and her books, anyone who could spread the word, get some flyers out, let's help this girl get 800 books, because I think she would know what to do with them. So with that said, I'm not sure, but we're getting close this month to kids going back into school, which means...
Starts on the 14th.
on the
Weaver's
14th.
already going.
Pardon? Weaver's already, yeah, Weaver's, they're their own schedule, guys. But in general, our kids are going to be back in school. That means buses are going to be around, more kids on bikes, more kids walking, so please be aware of that. And with that said, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Done, done, done. Made it before 9.
Thanks for helping out, Maria.
Oh, my
Yes.
pleasure. I've been
If
wanting
you ever
to-
do it again, we need the written agenda